While it's hard to say whether there's any one particular day that's best for running away from home, if forced to choose, one would probably say the 15th of September would be as good a day as any. But, on the other hand, to the mud-soaked and waterlogged girl stumbling through the woods, the 15th didn't feel particularly good for anything whatsoever. After all, it was her birthday, and nothing good had ever happened on it before. I'm Brian Flaherty.
And I'm Elliot Davis.
And today is September 15th, and that means there is only one game we could possibly be playing. Today, My First Dungeon presents Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, a slice-of-life tabletop role-playing game about a heartless witch, a peaceful house, and all the folks who have made their home inside. At the Bed and Breakfast, it is always September 15th because that is Yazeba's favorite day. And when you're a witch as powerful as Yazeba, why would you ever want it to be any other day? This is a game that Elliot and I have been eagerly awaiting since it was announced. And now that it's here, we feel the need to celebrate. Because after all, it's Gertrude's birthday. So to kick off this surprise party, Elliot and I are joined by the Emmy Award-winning co-creator of Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast and co-founder of Possum Creek Games, none other than Jay Dragon. Jay, welcome back!
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, I'm so excited to get to talk about all this.
I don't think I can overstress how excited I've been to read this game since it was announced. Like, tore through the ash can, was just like, come on, I need it. And now that it's here, I'm so excited to dive into it.
The 500-page PDF, yeah.
Well, and now it's the thing, I've read through, I haven't read through all of it, but because I want to save, like, I don't want to read the later chapters because I want to, like, unlock them and get them, and I want to, it'll be a sad day when I finally get to the end of this book because I'm trying to parse it out and savor it.
There aren't that many tabletop games that need spoiler warnings, and Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast is really the first one I've worked on where it's like, there are like, you know, there will be conversations where I'm like, by the way, spoilers. I know.
It's so lovely. I did like flip to some of the back pages one time and just like, because I had to know.
Of course.
And then I saw like one or two things. I was like, no, get out of here. No spoilers.
I've gone too far. I've gone too deep.
I've gone too far. Don't do it.
I've been very like tiptoey as I go through the PDF. I'm like, I'm just going to scroll one page at a time, make sure I don't accidentally do that to myself.
And like, you know, it's a non-linear story. It's designed to, you know, like anything can happen in any order. But yeah, no, there's definitely some surprises in the back that, you know, I think I'm not the kind of person who cares about spoilers, but it's fun to have a game where, you know, if you care about spoilers, you can really, you know, there's a lot of interesting stuff to look forward to.
See, I'm a staunch anti-spoiler. Like, I think someone telling me, like, what was in the trailer, if I don't want to see the trailer, was a spoiler. Like, I go too deep on the spoiler train. I recognize I'm in the minority. I might be wrong. I'm probably wrong.
No, I think I have the same character flaw. I'm pretty anti-spoiler.
Yeah, it is a flaw.
The philosopher Gaston Bachelard said that you have to read every book twice. And the first time is for the shock factor, and the second time is to like actually understand what's going on. So the first time you just have to experience it, and the second time you can make sense of it. And so spoilers, I don't want to read every book twice. So spoilers are like my way of reading it first before I read it the second time. But I will catch myself when watching a movie that I already know the plot of. I won't be present with the experience. I'll be analyzing it, which is also my preferred thing to do to movies in general. Like that's just what I do to movies that I like. I don't know. It's a different relationship. And I think if you're looking for the experience, it can sidetrack you.
I have to give you a commendation because that was the first time anyone's ever said a good explanation for why there should be spoilers that I actually paused and thought, I kind of agree with that. But before we just have me talking about spoilers, lose
ourselves in spoilers, yes.
Jay, first question I kind of want to put out there is, in the broadest sense, tell us what is Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast? What is this game? Who is it for? Kind of how to come about?
Yazeba's is a slice of life, you know, as mentioned, it's a slice of life tabletop game that uses pre-generated characters to tell short episodic stories, these chapters about kind of adventures taken on by this found family in this interdimensional bed and breakfast. The trick of Yazeba's is that you've got a character like, let's say, Gertrude, a trans runaway who's, ended up on the front door. And maybe in one chapter I play as her, maybe another chapter, Brian, you play as her. But the notes I make on the character sheet, when you take over, you still have those notes. The journey I take on, you still carry with you. And chapters are designed to be wildly different game experiences, united by the fact that when you accomplish something in a chapter, it makes changes to the game itself. So when you go into a chapter and you win a bouquet of dandelions or a muddy old boot or a jack-o'-lantern, you put those onto the shelves of the bed and breakfast, and in doing so unlock future characters, future chapters, all that stuff. So the game evolves as you play, even regardless of who you're playing it with. It's not like Dungeons and Dragons where each campaign starts at level 1. It's more like you're telling these little one-shots, and every single time you're impacting the structure of the game.
Love that explanation. Such a great pitch for this game. I want to kind of ask about, with this being the latest endeavor for Possum Creek broadly, how that pitch you just gave in this game broadly is both a unique endeavor, a first-time creation for Possum Creek, and also in some ways, which I think maybe you agree with this, a natural evolution of the body of work of Possum Creek.
Yeah. So Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, we started designing, my co-creator and I started designing in November 2019, which is noteworthy for being a really long time ago now. I think at the time of this episode's release, almost a 4-year, development phase. Also, notably, before I started designing Wanderhome. Oh. Sometimes I like to joke that everything I've done in the past 2 years has been groundwork and build-up for Yazeba's. That, like, even Wanderhome, all of Wanderhome, is kind of the prelude intro structure setup for, like, Yazeba's to be, to set up the conditions for its creation. Like, I'm a Machiavellian, cultist preparing the arrival of my eldritch god.
What a prelude.
True. Yeah, right? It's like, how do I teach people how to read Yazeba's? How do I teach people... How do you get people... And, that wasn't the intent of Wanderhome. That's not why I made Wanderhome. But there's a lot of Wanderhome where people will be like, I'm so excited about this part. I'm like, just wait until you see what I've been working on for 2 years before Wanderhome came out and 2 years afterwards as well. So, yeah, I think Yazeba's is a natural arc. It's also kind of a magnum opus. I don't think we'll be doing anything this large for quite a while. Mm-hmm. It's definitely kind of our... big statement of what games are able to be when you are just when you go at games from a different angle than what anyone else has been really trying to do.
And you say 4 years, this long process. You say you're probably not going to do something this big. Did you intend at the outset to make a 500-page magnum opus, or did this start smaller and just kind of became what it is, or was this always kind of the trajectory you had in mind?
We didn't have any sense of Yazeba's size at the beginning. That was kind of like what let it balloon so hard, is that we had a roadmap that was like, if we thought about the roadmap, we'd be like, yeah, that's really big. But really what happened was it was like, Em and I would, we were both working in different branches of the same art supply store. And so, while we were both at work, we'd be texting each other about ideas. Or, during quarantine, we'd just be kind of bored sitting around writing up new guests. And then, when we brought in other writers, it was just like, oh, yeah, make stuff, have fun with it. So it was just because Yazeba's was kind of such a slow burn in terms of its development, it wasn't until, I think, around when Wanderhome was coming out that we actually sat down and was like, let's create limits on the size of this thing. Let's box in the thing we've made. And there's stuff we left on the cutting room floor. There's entire approaches to the game that we intentionally have set aside. There's a lot of things we had to make the choice to be we're not going any further down this path. We're saving that for the future. So surprisingly, Yazeba's is contained, which I know is hard to believe looking at the behemoth of the book. But truthfully, the thing about it is that only a small portion of that behemoth is the actual baseline, right? It's only 20 pages of rules, and then you got some characters, and then you just pick a chapter, which is itself 4 pages maybe. So you add it all together, you get something any particular session is the size of a zine, but it just keeps expanding and iterating, and every creative idea either of us had for or any of us had for 4 years, we just took and slopped it in somewhere in there.
I really can't help but think about the second sign on the front door of Yazeba's room for everybody. Room for everyone. It's a perfect ethos for both the game design and the game itself, I guess, which is great.
Yeah. We wanted to make a game that really felt eclectic, like a game that felt like, how do you capture... There's a moment in the book where we say that Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast is many things. It is a book, it is a house, it is a role-playing game. And part of what that is, right, is that like the joke is that the name of the game is also the name of the hostel, but also the book itself is the bed and breakfast. Like it is on the, like they are the same object, right? The house is the book is the house. The book has basements, and the book has shelves, and the book has secrets hidden away, and like there is a reason why the front cover is just the house. And all the little figures so small around it, because the focus is on the house, and because the house is the book. And the game is the house is the book, right? They're all kind of, how do you, we want to be able to say when we say room for everyone, we mean on all levels, right? That the book is an accessible text, that it has space for many people, that the game can make space for people, and also that the game presents a sense of limitlessness in its design, that you feel like you could find anything in there if you looked hard enough, that when you get to a certain point you're like, there's nothing I could find here that would surprise me, and then you turn a page and there's something that surprises you, right? Like that's kind of what we want to be able to do.
It's like 500 pages going on infinite pages.
Yes. Yeah. That's the thing, is that like really like there's like, there's already people making fan content. I'm already kind of worrying in my head about more guests, more chapters. There's other people doing really interesting stuff there. It provides a really simple structure that it then iterates on endlessly in order to create the feeling that like, oh, I can put my own stuff in there, right? Like all this stuff exists to give me a sense that I could do even more with this. That even though so much has been written in this book, it's not the end. It's not like this is a final statement. It's the beginning. People oftentimes ask, the chapters in the book are laid out of order. So it starts with chapter 5 and then chapter 3 and then like chapter 11. And like chapter 1 isn't until like the 5th chapter into the book. And then there's like chapter 2 is halfway through the book, and people are like, why did you do that? Why are the contents of the book out of order? And there's a few design reasons for that, but a big one is that there's gaps in the numbering. So it's not saying that, oh, here is a list of all the chapters that exist. It's saying here are the collated chapters we could find, right? Here's, it implies if there's a chapter 1 and a chapter 2 and a chapter 3 and a chapter 5, well, now it's asking you, well, what's chapter 4, right? And that's on you. That's not us anymore.
When I first opened the PDF and I saw the, crazy numbering of chapters, there was a part of my brain that was just like, no. 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 But as I was reading it, in the opening bit, you say something about the book, or Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast kind of being thought of as like that childhood cartoon that was always on, but you never caught all in the right order. You just kind of caught episodes here and there. You weren't even sure if it was actually a cartoon. And like the second I read that, I was like, yes, I get it. I'm so on board. And I think that feeling of something that is like, that is reminiscent, but like just out of reach, like you're remembering it together, but it's all a little hazy, and you can kind of is a lovely lens to read this book through.
We would oftentimes, while developing it, talk about what was probably like, we like to joke that this is like a tabletop adaptation of an older media empire that has now been lost, and this is like the final relic of this media empire. Part of what that means is that, like, when understanding the narrative or the structure or any of it, we imagine, for example, there are many different orders you can read Yazeba's, and you can read it by the order of the chapters in the book, or by the ordering of the numbers of the book, or just by the order you play it in, each of which is going to be different. And that very easily, you can imagine maybe one of those was like the book series, or one of those was the 60s cartoon, or one of those was the 90s cartoon, or like, why is there 2 separate chapters where the plot line in both of them is that Amelie breaks down and someone has to like take over for them? And our answer for that is because the original book, there was only one of that, and then like in a TV show, they turned it into 2 episodes. Or, like they adapted it in 2 different contexts, and we wanted to preserve both. It's like we sometimes would imagine like that we are taking a show that we watched as kids, making the subtext text, and then bringing it over into the modern day. But that was like part of the imagination that drove the whole process.
I think there are so many games that it's something that was like this specific, almost like thinking of it as like a module or something, where I wouldn't necessarily play the same module twice. But with something like this, I'm way more inclined and excited to, because it feels intentional rather than like something that was supposed to kind of be played once and whatever.
Yeah.
This is very intentionally like, play it again, see how it changes, see what you do.
And chapters in Yazebas are designed to be played multiple times. And I think in a way that, like, there are some chapters where you'll play them and you'll go, that was good, I'm good, now I don't want to really play that one again. You know, I had fun with it, there's something more for me to get out of this. And there's some you'll play and you're like, yeah, I could do that again, right? Like, I could go in there again and do it differently. Like, Birthday for Gertrude, I think, is the classic. It's chapter 1, and it changes so heavily based on who is there and how they're playing and what their journeys are up to, that it really, like, or even who's playing Gertrude. And, like, it changes so much based on that each time, that, like, I've played Birthday for Gertrude probably about a dozen times, and I still am like, I could play it again. It's really one of those chapters where like I have fun with it every time. And you know, when you've been playtesting a game for 4 years, that is not the case for every single chapter in the game. Right. There's some chapters where I'm like, I've had enough of it. I'm willing to let it rest for a bit. But there's somewhere it's like I'm still ready to go.
I'm interested in that idea you brought up of subtext and making the subtext text, and I think that in a lot of ways, you can sum up a bit the themes of this game as like room for everyone. But I'm curious, like, what are the other themes that are central to that idea for you of making the subtext text, and just what are the themes that kind of informed the creation of the chapters and the game?
So Yazeba's is, you know, it's a big book, so there's a lot of themes. I don't want to like try and water it down to one thing, but I feel very strongly like Em and I both grew up working class as trans girls in rural New York. Our co-writers, you know, Mercedes and Lily we're all 4 of us are queer. They're people of color. We've all experienced, you know, we're all disabled in many different ways. We've all kind of got a wide variety of experiences. Mercedes has worked in activist communities. Lily is a school teacher. We have had like kind of these very wide experiences around working with communities, being in communities that both challenge our marginalization and, you know, the delight in our marginalization. And we've experienced kind of the intricacies, both the joys and the follies of queer community, you know, both in digital spaces and real life. And Yazeba's becomes kind of this great summing force of like, what if you could build a home for, what if you could, like, can you imagine what it would be to create a home that has room for everyone? And what is the day-to-day reality of living in this space that is maybe not always like maybe is sometimes financially precarious, or like there's social conflict, or like there's, you know, challenges or disasters or adventures, and like what is it all, you know, like there's a chapter where you can like run out of money. There's a chapter where like water damage can like break parts of the bed and breakfast. These things can happen. And so the game becomes about what is the day-to-day reality of being in community? What is the truth of being in a space where you've got little kids and old ladies and everyone in between running around? And so I think to me, that is kind of the big theme. I think also as well, you know, queerness, of course, but specifically, I've been reading Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars by Kai Cheng Tom, which is a fantastic book. And that is her autobiography. She's a trans woman in California, and it's her biography. And like, it's magical, right? Like her biography opens, chapter 1 is about the day she decided to run away from home was the same day all the mermaids washed up onto the shore and died. And so she's with her little sister trying to help the mermaids back into the ocean. And she's like, I think I'm going to run away from home. And this is her biography, right? And there's something so magical about, I think, specifically like queerness, the way I think your identity, like the way in which like the edge, like liminality, the edge of the world kind of begins to blend together, and also like generations and successive generations of caring for people. And like Yazeba and Gertrude, right, as an older queer woman and a younger queer kid is like a really important part. And like we're in a political climate right now where telling stories about queer kids and queer teenagers is like dicey stuff. Even when Yazeba's isn't, like we're not like doing anything kind of like, risque or like there are works of art that I think are more daring than what we choose to do. Like a lot of the themes of it are about, growing up as a young queer girl in a social context that is both challenging and inviting.
I think having that I don't even want to, but mundanity, that kind of day-to-day, that slice of life, and living in that, I think has a strange kind of like magical epic quality to it, even though there's no dragons and things to slay in like as in some other games, but there is something kind of like big and beautiful in those like much smaller moments that if you give people, they'll make a meal out of, and I think embodying those small moments allows you to even better empathize and sympathize with the characters that you're embodying, more so than slaying the dragon that you will never do. But you may live in this kind of house or this kind of community.
You'll never like Yazeba doesn't have any dragons to fight, but it does have laundry. It has catching ghosts. It has exploring the basement and finding. You go down to the basement and there's things like, oh, is that a goblin or a weirdly shaped watering can? Like, things like that where it's like there's a lot of it's playful and it's mundane in a way that, but like still able to have these really like dramatic, intense personal moments. Like there are some mechanics in the game that intercede into the thing and kind of create these really interesting, messy, fascinating situations that can come out of, it's both small and when you sum it all together, you're amazed at how large it can get.
This is a little bit off topic, but I've always loved in television shows when there are bottle episodes. So episodes that aren't part of the real narrative, usually are in like bottled up in one or two rooms or something, and they just kind of exist outside the main narrative. I don't quite know why I love them. You always get like some depth of character in those episodes because there's no real plot. It's just people talking usually. And I don't think I realized just till now that that's part of what this game is like. That's part of the itch this game is scratching for me is like,
oops, all beach episodes.
Exactly, all beach episodes. all of the, the flashback 70s episodes or something.
And you can sometimes get the sense that there's like stranger things happening. Yazeba is often away on witchy business. There are moments when you get hints to this. There's deep lore that I don't want to spoil here because we've talked about spoilers, but there's deep lore. When you read the game, you'll spot moments where you're like, wait, this is pointing at something larger and weirder. So in Moomins, one of my a deeply important influential thing for me, Moomin Valley by Tove Jansson, there's this sense that the world outside of Moomin Valley is undergoing kind of a great deal of turmoil. There's like the Hobgoblin, who is a powerful sorcerer who rides around on a black panther who shoots lightning down from his hands, and he shows up because he's called Moomins.
Moomins?
Yeah, it's a Finnish children's book series about a group of trolls that was turned into an anime in the 90s. Also with like this really cutesy
links in the description.
Links in the description. You can watch all the 90s Moomin episodes on YouTube, and they've got a new like show that just came out recently. But anyway, so Hobgoblin only is relevant because the kids like the Moomin and Snufkin and Lil Mai find his hat, which allows them to change things into pink smoke, and Moomin accidentally transforms himself into a horrible monster, and everyone thinks he's a monster, and like genuinely a disturbing looking drawing, like very unsettling for a little kid to see, and he's only redeemed when his mother sees through the monstrosity. It's like, yes, this is my Moomin. And then they change him back, and then they give the hat back to the Hobgoblin, who like arrives and is like, I am the Hobgoblin, and they're like, oh, we're so glad you're here, we have your hat. It's just like, and it's like, you get the sense, like, and like there's Moomin Papa used to be an adventurer and he owns a gun, and like there's like Snufkin is an anarchist, and there's all these things that are happening, like explicitly an anarchist. Like his first introduction is that he breaks into their garden and is stealing food from them, and Moomin Papa almost shoots him. And this is like it, but like it's all presented in this way where it's like that is all less important than whatever little misadventure they're getting up to right now. But you know that there's something bigger in the background. It's just that's not where the story is right now. And Yazeba's, I think, kind of ends up in a similar space.
I feel like you get those And I love that. Now I'm like itching to watch Moomins. Like I'm like pretty much after this interview,
It sounds
I'm gonna
like it slaps.
probably try and find an episode. Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like that deeper lore, like reading the introduction period, you start to get these wonderful pieces of like fiction written in over like these pink squares. And I feel like that's where I'm starting to like read those and I'm like, oh, that's like this like one or two words in a sentence that hints at like the bigger journey this character is going to undergo, while simultaneously being like an example of play, which like that balance and the way that you guys have struck that is incredible. But I love in particular this one that shows up on page 25 that's labeled The Beast of Ozda.
Yes.
Because, and correct me if I'm wrong on this interpretation, but I felt like I read that and I was like, this feels like that piece, thinking in the cartoon vein, where you have a character in a cartoon who has their own fantasy world that they're creating and you get glimpses of in every episode. And I got that and I was like, oh, this is probably like a really well-written version of like Hey Kids fantasy world that they're like playing in sometimes.
I would not necessarily describe the Heart Sword excerpts as well written. They are oftentimes intentionally very bad. But
sure,
yes. There's like some lines that are like, I clutched the masculine amulet of disguised self close to my feminine bosom, helpful that none would know my dark secret, that Igon the Bald was secretly a 12-year-old girl. But it's really, the Heart Sword stuff is fantastic. It's Gertrude's fantasy novel that she's reading. It's her favorite book, and it comes up a few times. But and there's like secrets in there. Like there's like things in there which if you like that, like some fans are really getting into like puzzling out like who is Emperor Zot? What is the secret meaning of this whole journey? And things like that are really playful and fun. I think like you can start to piece together where like a lot of Yazeba's is about like you don't have to know the canon going in. You don't have to understand any of the deeper lore to be able to play and have fun and do it well. But if you really dig into it, there's a lot you can find. And that's kind of, we think a lot about what we call like the shallow entrance and the deep fall, where it's like, I should be able to onboard anyone into this game in like 15, 20 minutes tops. Mm-hmm. And then if they pick up the book, they should be able to get lost in it for hours and days and weeks. They should be able to wiki dive this thing. And things like the Heart Sword excerpts, which I also, yes, I find are so delightful. Things like every few sections, there's the story of how another one of the residents arrived at the bed and breakfast, and it goes backwards chronologically. So you start with Gertrude, and then like Amelie, and then Sal, and then Hey Kid, and then Parrish. And so you get the story of the arrivals in like reverse chronological order, which is which like means that like they will raise questions which are later answered by future stories and things like that, where it's like there's a lot of like things woven in that are, as you said, simultaneously just fun stories in the style, like, you know, Vampire the Masquerade style, like fiction snippets, but also examples of play and tone setting and like tools to help you understand and deepen the way you tell stories in the world.
Yeah, there's one in particular where I think you lay out journeys for the first time. And it's this idea that like these characters have bigger journeys. And then there's this very short one called The Missing Room that talks about Sal looking at the record and being like, if there's room for everyone, why doesn't Gertrude have a room, essentially? And Yazeba's just like one line response is she'll find a bed eventually. And it's like, oh, she will. Like, I know she will, because I've like, and that's probably her journey. Like, I don't need to go look at her character sheet and see that that's like, you know, something that she will accomplish. Yeah, love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. My personal favorite snippet is pretty early on, and it's when describing, I think it's after guests, the concept of guests who are like side characters, and one of the side characters is Rag and Bones, who is a devious and incompetent skeleton, and the accompanying fiction to the guest is called Bag and Roans, and it's Rag and Bones disguised as a bear sneaking his way into the bed and breakfast, and Sal trying to intercept him and be like, "You're not actually a skeleton inside of a bear costume, are you?" And then, you know, the skeleton inside the bear costume laughs, you know, "Oh, of course not." You know, it's really fun. It's like we have this thing we joke about called like the good book rule, which is that like ideally our games should be good books in addition to being games, which is like you should be able to pick up a copy of one of our games and read it and have a good time reading it. That like we're not just designing for playability, but also for like readability and like worth as a book. Like if you want to learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons or Blades in the Dark or, you know, Pathfinder, you can read the book. Sure, it's dense and kind of hard often. You can get a friend to teach it to you. You can, you know, you can listen to a podcast. With Yazebas, we wanted it to be that sitting down and reading the book is like, you're not just doing it to learn the rules of the game. You're doing it because it's like a fun thing to read.
We've talked on this podcast a bunch about how a lot of our favorite games end up being the ones that are very readable. So something like we both loved playing 10 Candles, and part of that book is like it's a very fun read, and every aspect of that book plays into the tone and the vibe and the game that you're trying to set. And I think,
quote that book. I quote 10 Candles. It's like, do you know how good a tabletop RPG has to be for me to be like, I want to quote a section from it to like explain a philosophical concept? Like, it's good.
And I think that both Wanderhome and now Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast really hit that too, because like they're great reads. I am happily reading through them without having been able to play them yet. And every aspect of them is just feeding back into the tone and the vibe you're trying to set, making it easier and easier and easier for players to, as you were saying, like the shallow entrance, like getting into the game quickly so they can, as quick as they want, have fun because all of the tools have been presented for them in this great piece of literature and book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Midnight Muscadines is a cozy, dark tabletop role-playing game where light and shadow intertwine in a fractured world. Players take on the roles of Marmoteers, brave adventurers who journey into the untamed Wildernight to collect the elusive Midnight Muscadines, craft magical jams, and protect the fragile light of Nim. Through collaborative storytelling and resourceful gameplay, players weave tales of courage, community, and the pursuit of balance. Will you preserve the light, uncover the truths hidden in the shadows, or reshape the balance of the world forever? Midnight Muscadines is perfect for fans of Studio Ghibli and Sea of Stars who seek to capture the magic of exploration and the heartfelt adventure in a world where small heroes make a big impact. Play Midnight Muscadines as a traditional GM'd game, GMless, or even solo. Midnight Muscadines is crowdfunding now on BackerKit. Join the campaign at pandeongames.com/muscadines.
I'm Quinns of tabletop role-playing game review show Quinn's Quest, and this is Play to Find Out. Play to Find Out is an actual play podcast that brings notorious old games from the 80s and 90s back to the table. Each season of Play to Find Out, I'm joined by Emily Johnson and Rob Morgan.
Good? Nervous?
Yeah.
You both looked at each other really concerned, like you think what's about to happen is going to be unpleasant. And frankly, I think that's rude.
And together, we explore the TTRPGs of ages gone by. Our goal? To separate the TTRPGs that deserve to be remembered from those that maybe don't. I don't know, Emily. It was the 80s. A lot of people were on cocaine. We blow the dust from decrepit systems to learn how they work. Your 100 on the encounter table bursts out. Right, you've encountered a fog. Get ready. Don't laugh.
There's one get ready for a fog.
Don't laugh. Encounter their unique quirks.
I do finger guns to cover up how I wince.
A weird thing happens as you do finger guns.
Oh no.
And I'm hoping that the Quinn's Quest community will join us in exploring these games too. If you this up, cannot describe to you how much your adventure ends here.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because the best way to learn is to play to find out. Play to Find Out is available now on the Quinn's Quest Patreon, but the first episode of each series streams for free on the Quinn's Quest YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Anyway, you failed the Earth Tech roll, and you made jokes while I was doing my exposition, so you don't get to hear any more.
Oh, no. Come on.
I was shook as...
We've been talking a lot about the kind of broader design stuff and the history. I think we got to move into a little bit of the specifics of how you play this game. Because this is, as you've said before, there is a shallow entrance to this game. But in the broadest sense, what are the mechanics that you use throughout this game?
So Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, you pick first a chapter, which determines the adventure you're going on and also the rules of the game in a mechanical sense. So like one chapter might use tokens like Wanderhome does. Another one might use coin flipping as a way to model kind of escalating losing of control. Another one might use a deck of cards to model this like eerie, haunting, exploratory mood. And so you identify the mood you want to play, the chapter you want to play. You learn the rules for that particular chapter. And with the specific character you've chosen, either a resident who is a more long-term character with a larger arc, who has multiple journeys, or a guest who has like a much smaller journey, and like is more of an ancillary character. With those, you pick your characters, you play the chapter, and then the materials you get from that chapter impact the future. So, but the key thing is that every single character sheet has bingos and whoopsies. Bingos being moments of personal triumph and whoopsies being moments of like personal failure. So like a character might have a bingo that's like, show off a skill no one knew you had, or make a new friend. And then a character might have a whoopsie that's like keep a secret or assume the worst or have a meltdown, right? Those can be whoopsies. And different chapters will have different rules about what to do. So when I'm teaching new people, it's like, cool, we've got our chapter that will teach us how to play. So I guess in the name of teaching you how to play, of getting into specifics, what chapter would we want to play?
Oh,
what mood are we in? What mood are we in? I guess if I'm going to ask you, if I'm going to model teaching you, what mood are we in? Are we looking for something more relaxed, more pensive, more frantic, or eerie?
I'm feeling pretty relaxed right now. I'm having a great time. So I don't know, Elliot, what do you think? What are you feeling?
Well, it's funny you said that because my first instinct was like, ooh, frantic. I kind of like the sound of frantic.
We can frantic.
We could frantic. I could teach you how to play A Birthday for Gertrude.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Cool.
Absolutely. That's super appropriate.
Yeah, that sounds good. So the way it works is we've got our chapter. We'd pick characters. Who wants to be Gertrude in this
I'll be
model?
Gertrude.
Cool, Brian, you're Gertrude. Elliot, who are you feeling? We've got a cast of characters. Normally I'd read them off, but you have the PDF open, so you're in fact in a better spot to do that.
I'm a big fan of Hey Kid.
Oh, that's
yeah.
great. Hey Kid is
what's up?
wonderful. I think I'll be in addition to being the concierge, because I'm facilitating this, I will also be Amelie, the overworked robotic housekeeper. And you're Hey Kid, the demonic child that was left on the front door. And Brian, you are Gertrude, the runaway, trying to find a place. And people are throwing a birthday party for you. The way the mechanics of this one works, this is the frantic mood. So we use coins. And we use tracks. We have one track, which is a birthday cake, that once we fill in all 6 slices, the party starts. We also each have our own track, a 3-part track for our presents. So you're working on a secret present for Gertrude. You don't want Gertrude to know what it is, and so am I. And we've got a little 3-part track. Gertrude, you have your own special rules. But for Hey Kid and I, whenever we want to tick a track, right, either on the big cake track or on our presents, we flip the chaos coins we have. We start with no chaos coins, so we automatically succeed. And then we get a chaos coin. Next time I want to take a track, let's say I want to work on the party some more, I'll flip my 1 chaos coin. If it comes up heads, great, I succeed, I get another chaos coin, the track is ticked, continue on. If I get a tails, then I fail, I do a whoopsie about it, which I mentioned are the stuff on my character sheet. I get another chaos coin, and I continue on. Next time I want to do something, I have to flip 2 chaos coins and hope they both come up heads. Then I have to flip 3 chaos coins and hope they all 3 come up heads. And then I have to flip 4 chaos coins and hope they all 4 come up heads. And you will notice that as that goes on, it gets increasingly less likely that I will succeed and increasingly more likely that I'll fuck up. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah, you're good.
Absolutely.
Cool. It's increasingly likely that you will fuck up. Now, you have a couple ways to get rid of chaos coins. The first one is if you have 5 chaos coins, cash in all 5 and immediately succeed. Your other option is to do a bingo. And when you do a bingo, you have a moment of kindness, you show off your best self, and you give all your chaos coins to the person who you're being nice to. You make them, you karmically inconvenience them. No good deed goes unpunished. I
love this game so much.
So we're working, Elliot, we're working on our presents and we're working on the track. Once we get our presents done and the track is done, the party is ready. Gertrude, you're not working on presents. You're not working on tracks. You've got your own thing. Whenever you ask someone a question, flip your chaos coins.
Okay.
If you succeed, you force them to answer your question. And if they lie to you, you tick a spot on your track. And Gertrude, you're not trying to help the party. You're trying to figure out what's going on because we have to keep the party a secret from you. You're not supposed to know there's a party going on. So you're asking questions, trying to force people to answer you. And when they lie to you, you benefit from it. And once they have lied to you enough, you can make a guess about where you think the party is happening. And if you are correct, then you have found out the party. And it is up to you whether or not to, help out, see it through, finish it up, or to put the kibosh on it right then and there, and we all go home empty-handed and with only a sad paper crown to mark the occasion. And that's how you play this particular chapter.
It sounds lovely.
Podcast listeners can't see our faces right now, but Brian and I are just sitting with like shit-eating grins on right now about this.
Yeah.
About this whole premise.
Yeah.
It's delightful. I love it for a few reasons. I mean, on the one hand, it is capturing this structure of like a birthday party episode that feels so familiar. And then on the other hand, you get to do the bits and bobs. You get the coins, you get to like move coins. And yeah, it's mechanically super interesting and then thematically just delightful.
I think it's also interesting from a lot of other GM-less games, like, if you've heard Wanderhome doesn't give you a lot of tools on how to end your little story. Yazeba's is really concerned with making sure that the ending is interesting as well as the beginning, that like the whole chapter feels like it's not out of your control. Like even though it's GM-less, it has an arc and there's a lot of space to play in that arc and many branching choices to make, but it is almost itself like a little scenario to play out. And then in addition, I think that I love Birthday for Gertrude for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that it does a really good job justifying why we really felt it was important to do pre-gen characters, why pre-gen characters in particular are so important to Yazeba's, among other reasons, is because it lets us build these mechanics so specifically to the characters, right? Like if this was Birthday for Hey Kid's structure around navigating their birthday party would be totally different than Gertrude's. But Gertrude is a specific person, and we can design her mechanics to reflect her own personality for each chapter that she's in.
As you were going through and explaining how we play Birthday for Gertrude, you also mentioned that you were taking on the role of concierge. But this is still a GM-less game, so can you tell me a little bit about the role of what a concierge does in this game?
So a concierge is the person who owns the copy of the book. Because while this game is GM-less in that it doesn't have the traditional GM-player relationship, there's still a lot of practical things. Like we really sat down and we're like, what are the roles of a GM? Like what are the responsibilities that traditionally are assumed to be part of a GM's responsibilities? What are those that don't have to be theirs, and what are those that still need to be theirs in this context? And so we nailed it down to three things that a concierge must do. The concierge being the major domo of the bed and breakfast, who like is a character in universe theoretically, like they're referenced a couple times in the fiction. They're like, I encourage you to imagine when you are the concierge that it is literally you in like a funny little outfit, like a Grand Budapest Hotel style little fit. That's what I always picture. Like, Concierge J is like, is just me, like the one human character in a Muppets, thing. And the concierge has three roles. They are the facilitator, the narrator, and the bookkeeper. So their responsibilities are to teach new people and to welcome them to the table and to kind of set things up for them and to like kind of do the little process of picking a chapter and explaining the rules like I just did. They are the narrator, which means that When things are quiet, when no one knows what to do next, the concierge can narrate a thing that happens. They can describe the world around them, although like players can contradict them very easily. And then they are the bookkeeper, which means that after the chapter is over, they're the one responsible for figuring out like, oh, you finished your journey. Let me get the sticker that we can put on your sheet over your new journey. Oh, you finished, like, oh, we unlocked this new guest. Let me go find that guest's printout and add them to the pile. That sort of thing. That's kind of the responsibility of the concierge as bookkeeper at the end. And those are the roles that we felt were like, we need someone who is operating these roles. It makes sense that they're the person who owns the game, right? That like, it is effectively your role as, in the same way that like, it's like if a board game said, gave a special hat to the person who owned the game and said, your role is to keep track of the board game when no one is around and to pack it back up again after everyone's done playing, right? Like that is the concierge in essence, is you are the caretaker of this instance of the book/house/game.
And if you want a really good example of, at a baseline, the facilitator portion of that, rewind a couple minutes to Jay taking us through Gertrude's birthday.
Yeah, exactly.
I think. Yeah.
And that's, like I've done a lot of concierging. I have a purple binder that for the past 2 years has been my personal iteration of Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast. Like it's all bound up in there. And for years now, every time I play with a group of people, that's the edition we've been playing with, making modifications. Sal, the night porter, sold his heart, and it was a whole journey to get it back again. The world almost ended. It's been like a tumultuous little binder, but it's been my, kind of both the playtest object to see really like, we want to see what a legacy campaign of this is like for years and years, right? Because people will be owning this for years and years. What does that feel like? And also, to get a sense of like, for me, what is it like to run this? What is it like to concierge this? What is it like to, like, I don't want to tell people you're a bookkeeper now that you own this, unless I know what it's like to keep the book.
And then as far as the bookkeeping goes, one of the aspects of bookkeeping in this is littering the book with stickers and advancing tracks. We gotta talk about stickers.
Yes,
we gotta
absolutely.
talk about stickers.
So at the end of A Birthday for Gertrude, assuming that the party went well, we get a little square sticker called it's about a 3/4 of an inch square of a little piece of birthday cake, and that's a memento. And we find somewhere in the bed and breakfast to put it. And there's all these shelves. You can put it in Gertrude's backpack. We can put it on the front desk. We can put it in Yazeba's study, wherever we want to put it. And when we do so, we put in one of these little square slots. And then if we get 2 more little square slots, we can unlock a new guest, right? Maybe Muckleby comes to visit the bed and breakfast, who's like a sentient blob of slime. Maybe we unlock a new chapter where like people can go berry picking. Maybe we unlock, a late game chapter that's like more emotionally intense. And the stickers are, first off, it's just a lot of fun to get to like pull stickers out and stick them on things. But also, they're the way of kind of ensuring that even though this is a non-chronological game, you kind of approach it however, if you follow the rules and you want that experience, there is still this sense of like early chapters, intermediate chapters, late chapters. Like the game feels like it flows through still.
I've always been a really big fan of things that are like homemade and like used and worn. Like I was a big fan of the YouTuber Casey Neistat, because like he just built everything himself in a very fun. So everything he had was like just built and like made of 2x4s and glue or whatever. And I love that. And there's something really exciting about having this book and like looking at it in like 2 or 3 years and having just like a bunch of stickers littering the pages and like pages sticking out of the thing and like everything's just like just this being this worn magical item that's just sitting in your bookcase that with a whole world inside.
Yes, absolutely. We really wanted the feeling of like, this is a special magical object for you. This is that when by caring for this thing, it becomes like your own personal scrapbook. And that was really critical to us. Like, and like, there's things like, there's one guest who, a sentient wasp dignitary, and when she departs the bed and breakfast, she can only come back if you press a wildflower into the pages of the book. There's one guest, there's like, Hey Kid encourages you to draw, panels of their comic when they're bored. Gertrude encourages you to like cross out her hearts or like draw new hearts on her page. Sal wants you to like mess with song lyrics. There's like notes from characters throughout the book where like you'll see like a clarification on a game mechanic in like Gertrude's handwriting, and there's like a different font for every single character. So if you feel particularly like kind of fascinated, you can like piece together who's writing what notes, like who wrote what in what part of the book. There's an entire section of the book that's written in Hey Kid's handwriting, and things like that where it's very, it's a book that's designed to play with and to add to and to expand on until it's like your personal copy. Like it really feels like, there's more I want to say, but even that, I think that might count as spoilers. So I think, but like there's really a lot of ways that the book can become your own.
And as we know, we're very conflicted about spoilers on this podcast.
Yes, of course.
More conflicted than ever.
We're just trying to figure out where we stand. So we're going to hold off, but maybe in a later interview.
You'll find it. You'll find what I mean. You'll dig through and you'll know what I mean.
I was reading online, and there was a comic book artist that I really like who wrote a comic called 8 Billion Genies that just ended. And the premise of the comic is that everyone on Earth gets a genie with one wish, and it's what
incredible.
happens. It just ended. It's
Great
phenomenal.
series.
A great series. But he was at a comic convention signing comics, and someone in the line brought him like a second edition, whatever, or like third or fourth printing of the second issue that was like dog-eared, complete, like just an absolutely destroyed copy. And he, on all the other copies that have been whatever, he just signed it. And that one he drew like all over it because like, oh, this has been loved. Like this person loves it.
Oh yeah, I think there's this story once I think of Gaiman and Pratchett at a book signing, and they received someone brought them a copy of Good Omens to sign that was in a wooden box. When they opened up the wooden box, the book was like effectively like a pile of pages that had been like bound together by rubber bands and like had fallen in the bath. And it was this like, and they like, there's like such a beautiful, like we have this weird thing in our culture about like virginal purity when it comes to especially nerd objects. Like as someone who plays Magic the Gathering, it comes up a lot there.
Yeah,
you see it a
sleeve
lot.
all my cards.
Oh yeah, I mean I do too, but like that's it's this sense of this anxiety of like what if the valuable thing is damaged. And a lot of like I own a tarot deck where there are cards that are like have been signed, or cards that have been dog-eared, or cards that have like gotten like soda spilled on them. I own a Magic the Gathering cube where we put stickers on the cards to change what the cards do. And like some of the cards have gotten like cut up and destroyed. And I have a deep fascination with like, what if, what does it mean to love an object? And we have this idea that to love an object means to keep it safe from being tarnished. And I've been really into the idea of what if it means to love an object means to, like eat it, to destroy it, to like sink your teeth into it physically and rip it apart.
So I was going to say that like apocryphal story about Maurice Sendak,
Yes.
where
Yes.
apparently, for anyone who doesn't know the story, it's a lovely story. And some kid loved, was it Where the Wild Things Are?
Yeah.
And his mother wrote Maurice Sendak, and Maurice Sendak was tickled by it and drew an original drawing of Where the Wild Things Are and sent it to the kid. And the mother sent a thing back saying, "Thank you so much. He loved it so much that he ate it." There is no better compliment.
What greater way is there to show love for an object than to like, want it so close to you? I think Yazeba's is kind of like playing in that. Like Yazeba's is playing with ephemerality. It's playing with, like something that gets broken down over time and reformed over time. Like I hope I would be delighted beyond belief if in, 5 years from now, I get to see people's copies of Yazeba's that are like dog-eared and torn to bits. I think that would be the greatest honor I could ask for.
I was really hoping you were going to say in 5 years that someone comes and they'd eaten Yazeba's bed and breakfast.
Oh well, if someone has eaten Yazeba, that's a different story. That I would be done. I'd be good. I wouldn't have to write another RPG. My work would be finished here.
Okay,
yeah.
for the good of the tabletop role playing game community, no one eat Yazeba's bed and breakfast. You mustn't. There's the siren call is there. Ignore it. You must fight it.
We cannot eat the delicious tabletop RPG.
I think it's so interesting, this whole idea of like loving an object to death sort of thing. And I feel like it's in so many ways that this game captures of like things we knew how to do. And this is something you've written a lot about in design blogs and articles, is things we knew how to do as a kid that then games can help us discover again as adults. And I think that this like loving something to destruction is something we really know how to do as kids. If you have that, like, you know, go find that stuffed animal that maybe you're still holding on to, that you chomped on the ears and you yanked the arms and everything. And it's this instinct that we very much have. And I love all the ways that comes into play in Yazeba's, this idea of like, we knew how to do this, you know, we knew how to make a world as infinite as Yazeba's as kids.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And now we're rediscovering it kind of through the game.
And that's why I think it's so important. Like, you know, I think it's easy to be critical of Yazeba's kind of childish tone. And I think, like, I know that there are people, like, I have friends of mine who have bounced off of it because they're like, they don't like that it's a game that's playing with kind of this children's media property, this kind of like sense of like, you know, kind of like, you know, whoopsies, you know, like, you know, it's got, you know, references to no tag back rule, you know, it's a lot of the language of childhood. That's like on purpose. And I think it's because it wouldn't work the way I wanted it to without us putting you in the mindset of like kind of allowing yourself to re-explore childhood, right? Like a lot of what it's trying to do mechanically, you know, there's no reason why it has to be this setting. It could be a different setting that we've like fleshed out. You could have a mega dungeon that is, you know, you could have like an OSR game that is built in this style. But it was important to make you feel like the stakes were low. It was important to make you feel like your kid's on a playground again, that you're telling a story with something from your childhood, something that you can be nostalgic over, but also that doesn't feel that its sacredness feels like it's something that merges, it's something you can apply to it. If you played Yazeba's, if you played a version of it that had a different setting, that where maybe the stakes were higher, it would suck to like have a pre-generated character you're attached to and then you come back and find out they're dead. You know, it would be harder to tell a story where we don't already have this kind of shared social contract of what a story for children is like. Because, you know, a lot of my games are designed with safety tools kind of built in at many levels. And one of the tricks of Yazeba's is that a lot of the tone and content is built in, right? Like you sit down at a you know, a game of Dungeons and Dragons and lines and veils are important. You know, you sit down with Monster Hearts, really important. You know, you're handling a lot of stuff. And like, it's important to like set boundaries and to talk about like what you are or are not comfortable with Yazeba's, but a lot of it is prefigured for you, right? Like, you know that you can expect that there won't be violence. Like if there was someone, you know, if you got stabbed, that would be a weird, unwelcome thing to have happen that like would, you know, like it's putting you in the mindset, it's putting you in the framework kind of off the bat.
I know that we were talking with Kieran Gillen and Grant Howard about Die for a previous season. And in that game, they kind of joke that their on-ramp into like getting to that childlike space is that there's kind of an irony failsafe in that game because you're playing people. So you can always kind of default to, I'm not doing that. It's the person I'm playing doing that. Whereas Yazeba is kind of doing a similar thing, but it's just like, we're putting you in a childlike space. So you can always kind of default to that space if you want. Like it's not you, it's child you.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find safety in like, what is this character? It's not kind of a character whole cloth from your own imagination. It is a character who is defined by a story. It's a character whose shape can already be known. And who's kind of more childlike, right? Like you're playing Hey Kid, part of, you know, Hey Kid's a great character to play for, you know, I love to play Hey Kid, partially because they're very active and so they can instigate a lot of stuff, but also they're very childlike. So if you're bored, it feels safe to be like, I'm bored. I'm sick of this part. Can we do a different thing? Like, and that can be in character, but like you mean it, you know? And like it's this lovely little like gift that the character gives you.
That's a real hack for Hey Kid. I'm bored.
I'm bored. Yeah, like, you know, you can just be like, I'm tired. Like more people in general should do that in RPGs, to just be able to be like, hey, this part is dull and has gone on for too long. Can we skip? But like I think Hey Kid gives you and like children in general give you a special vector to do that. Like characters where it's okay for them to be rude, like where we're not scared of them being rude.
So I want to talk a little bit about just like get a little heady about the game design, because I know you love to talk about this stuff and I love to hear about it. We, in our Wander Home conversation, I don't know if you remember, you mentioned this idea of systems of relation, and this was something you had written about. And when listening back to that conversation and this idea that when you're not using the mechanics, there's still the game there through these systems of relation. It feels like this game doubles down on that idea, and I'd be really curious to hear you talk about how that was implemented and thought about.
Yes. So, Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast. In most games, we conflate rules and mechanics and the game itself, right? When you talk about Dungeons and Dragons, things like D20 and leveling and classes and races feel fundamental to the game, right? Like, how do you can't really separate out oh, I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons, but, freeform. It's like, well, okay, you've changed it. It's no longer, you're not necessarily playing Dungeons and Dragons. Whereas Yazeba's says that the rules are secondary to the game. The rules are whatever we want them to be in that moment, right? It's like, oh, this chapter, the rules are this way, and this chapter, the rules are that way. In A Birthday for Gertrude, we're using coins. When we go trick-or-treating, we'll be using a deck of cards. When we go fishing, we'll be using tokens. When we go firefly catching, we'll be using questions. We'll be using these different structures. And there are repeating structures, but they're not fundamental to the game. You could just as easily make your own chapter that has a completely different game mechanic that it uses, just for fun. And that's because ultimately what it means to play Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast is defined by the world and the setting. So when you play a game set in your Yazeba's, that's playing Yazeba's, and so it's a different relationship to what the game is, right? And that came out of, I realized this whole thing about systems of relation that you're mentioning, that is something that I figured out through making Yazeba's. That is something that I put together through the process of making Yazeba's. And Yazeba started very much the name of the game was the first thing written down. It was, Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast. We wrote down in a trance, and then we were like, all right, we have this bed and breakfast. What are its rules? And we wrote a bit about, no soliciting, trespassing, romancing, snooping, snitching, or unnecessary small talk welcome. And then we were like, oh, but there has to be there has one more thing, room for everyone. And we sort of started getting a sense of the characters. And then we had a few different system ideas before we settled. I think what happened was, I had a little bit of an idea of oh, what if this is a hack of Lady Blackbird? And M had never read Lady Blackbird. So I wrote a couple of characters that used Lady Blackbird mechanics. And then M wrote a chapter, the first chapter, that interpreted those mechanics in a really different way than what I meant. And I was like, oh, but that's fine. And we realized hey, wait a second. This can be a game about plugging pieces together in different ways, where if you keep the character the same, but you change the rules every time. And that was kind of where a lot of that emerged.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about working with M and what you kind of think each of you brought to this process, and then maybe expanding the team out from there, what all the different, because it seems like this is the biggest list of contributors of a Possum Creek game, if I'm not
you are
mistaken.
Correct.
How did all these people come together to make this?
So it started with M and me. M was really the systems head, and I was a lot of the creative. So M has a mind for systems. M is really a tinkerer. If you've ever played Wickedness, which is by her, you get a sense of her style, which is she's got all these little moving pieces, and she finds the right way to move them together. And the rules almost look arbitrary until you're playing, and then suddenly you realize how they all fit together. So M's so good with systems, and then I am a voracious writer. I can just come up with things and believe them to be good enough to write down. And then M is very much like an editor, right? So a lot of our creative process is I write, 2,000 words, and then M turns them into 1,500 good words, and then M writes 500 words, and then I write another 1,500 words, So it's where a lot of it is M plants a seed, I make it grow, and then M trims the bush. The other two writers, Mercedes and Lily, are both fantastic, who came on a little bit later once the kind of baseline had been established and we had a sense of what we want the project to be. And we went, oh no, we can't do all of this alone. We need other perspectives. We need other perspectives, and we also need other skill sets. So Lily is a cartoonist, and also Lily does not have RPG experience. Lily is a cartoonist and a fiction writer. And so Lily, they brought a lot of like a more traditional, like almost like a cartoonist mindset where they wrote a lot of prose. And then Mercedes is also a game designer, but has kind of just a very different kind of like energy and outlook and approach. And Mercedes also adopted some of the characters, I think most notably Amelie, and really made Amelie their own. Like a lot of Amelie's characterization came from Mercedes, kind of really, and like a lot of the best Amelie chapters are Mercedes taking Amelie and getting them operational. And then Grubby is the art director. She handled all the art, her team of artists. We have, like half a dozen artists, including a designated artist who just draws Hey Kids art. So all of the art for Hey Kid is by one specific artist, who really does a great job. There's a lot of great art in there. We can look at the credits for that. And there's the editing team where we had Avery Alder, who wrote Monster Hearts and The Quiet Year, as a design consultant. We had LD Lewis, who is one of the main organizers behind Fire Festival and a really talented writer of their own right, whose list of accomplishments is genuinely too long for me to name. They were the narrative editor, and we had Kazumi Chin, who is also the mechanical editor for Wanderhome. Kazumi came back to edit for Yazeba's. Kazumi is fantastic, both a designer and a professor of a designer, a poet, and a professor of Asian American Studies at UC Berkeley. And then there was, Dominique Dickey was the organizer and was the creative consultant. So there's like an editing team, an art team, a writing team, and we were all kind of passing stuff back and forth and building stuff. Like an artist would have an idea, like the concept artist, Aster, came in and was like, hey, what if like Yazeba smoked cigars and it was like this? And we were like, hell yeah. Like here's some outfit ideas for Sal. And it was like, this is great. Gets reincorporated back into the game, all these sorts of things.
So, Jay, I guess my final question would be, why September 15th?
Well, first off, it's Gertrude's birthday, although Yazeba didn't know that when she chose it. The real answer, I think, is that September 15th is one of the last warm days of summer before we get to fall. It's kind of in that intermediary season, but most season intermediaries kind of suck, right? Like the area between spring and summer is too hot. The area between winter and spring is too wet. The area between autumn and winter is too miserable. Like no one would choose December 15th as their favorite day of the year. But September 15th is a really good, it's not, you've got, warm days, but cold nights. It kind of balances well the temperatures. And also, I like to think that it's Yazeba's birthday too.
Aww.
I love that.
I love that too.
And if you were a witch who made a magic house for yourself, wouldn't you want it to just always be your birthday, even if you also never wanted to celebrate your birthday because you're a heartless evil witch?
I really love that. Just that headcanon too of Yazeba just wanting her birthday but never tells anyone. Just
it's just for herself. It's just but like just, and it's a headcanon. I don't think it's anywhere in the text, but I think it's I think part of what's fun about Yazeba is I have headcanons. It's getting to have headcanons about a thing you've made.
I love it. And then I think that I love ending on that question. That's great. Jay, is there anything else, while we have you, anything else you wanted to talk about the game or anything that we didn't cover that you want to make sure to get in?
The physical edition of Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast is coming out in a little bit less than 2 months. It'll be in early mid-November. So keep an eye out for that. Be sure to go pick up a copy at possumcreekgames.com or at your local game store. Or if you're going to PAX Unplugged, which, stay COVID safe. But if you are, we'll be doing stuff there and having some special events to celebrate the release of the book. So do come pick up a copy if you're around and say hi. I'd love to say hi.
Hell yeah. And remember, do not eat your copy.
Do not
Whatever you do, do not eat your copy.
Bed and breakfast. Do not resist all of all the demons in the back of your mind telling you that it would be so tasty. Don't
you can have a page or
them.
two.
No, see,
Page
that's
or
how
two,
it starts.
that's
You
fine.
think, oh, that corner looks especially tasty. I'll just eat a little corner. And then all of a sudden you've consumed a 500-page book. We don't want that. We don't want that here.
It's really a gateway page if you think about it.
Exactly. That is all the time we have. Jay, thank you so much. A, for coming on the show, and B, for making all these great games that we're so excited to play.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute delight.
Though that's all the time we have, do not worry. This party has just gotten started. Head back over to your podcast player right now and tune into any of the chapters of Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast that we are playing, all of them featuring original music, immersive sound design, and an absolutely amazing cast. Listen to them in any order, because as you've heard here, the order doesn't matter. Start wherever you like, whatever strikes your fancy, hit that episode, and then you're going to want to listen to all the other ones, I promise you. Oh, and before you go, you should know the rules of the bed and breakfast. They're written on a large sign on the front door. As you heard before, no soliciting, trespassing, romancing, snooping, snitching, or unnecessary small talk welcome. But you will also notice that little sign just below, a second smaller sign that reads, Room for Everyone. Goodbye, everybody.
Stay as long as you want, or as long as you can. Stay as long as you like. I stayed for a night. Oh, I'm mistaken. I've lived here all my life. Nowhere to be, but everything to see. Okay, what's next?
What's next?
Hey, it is your humble concierge here. If you're enjoying the adventures of the bed and breakfast so far, head on over to patreon.com/myfirstdungeonpod. There, you're going to find 2 brand new chapters at Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, completely sound designed and scored, as well as talkbacks for all 8 episodes of our adventures from My First Dungeon presents Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast. But shh, don't tell Gertrude.
Hey, who are you?
Pantry demons. Pantry demons.
So weird
I'm
today.
the Pantry Demons.
I don't
Boo.
know about that. Okay, bye.
If you're looking for more great gaming content from everyone here at Many Sided Media, you should consider subscribing to the 20 Sided newsletter. It's a free, bi-monthly newsletter for people who love games, make games, and just love making games. To subscribe, just go to 20sidednewsletter.substack.com or follow the link in the show notes.